Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. Today's video is part 2 of my cottage core videos. So let's get started. My first project is a small 4-drawer nightstand that I thrifted recently. What I'm doing now is I'm using Dixie Belle Boss, and it's a sealer that keeps any of the stain from bleeding through. Now, I know that you're not used to seeing me on camera, but this was about the only way that I could show you because it's a bigger piece. And if you'll look in the background, yes, that's our 2-story playhouse that my husband built for the grandkids a couple years ago, and they love it. So when you use the Boss product, you're supposed to put on about 2 coats, and then you're supposed to wait 24 hours before you paint. So the next day, because it was so hot and humid in North Carolina, I actually brought the drawers inside of the house. And I'm using Dixie Belle Buttercream on the drawers, and then I'm going to be putting a transfer on it. And when you put a transfer, you want to make sure that you get sealer on it so it will stick well. And because I was going to do that, I wanted to go ahead and get the drawers painted and sealed. And then I went back later and painted the entire nightstand. So this is an IOD transfer, and it's really large. And it comes with 4 different pieces. But because IOD has the graphing lines on it, it's easy to kind of match up everything. And I will put the name of it in the description box because I'm not good at speaking French, so I don't want to mess up the name. Now, when I laid it down on the front, I wanted to make sure that the script was going to be in the middle, which meant that I was going to be cutting the flowers off on the side. But that's okay because you can use a transfer in so many different ways that I will be able to use those in future products. But it was more important for me to make sure that that script was on it. So at the top of the nightstand, I put on one piece of the transfer, and then on the other side, I put on the second piece of the transfer, and the third piece actually coordinates with the first piece, and so I'm just matching it up to make sure that all of it looks and fits real well. And this is what it looks like. Now, because I didn't want to use the drawer pulls, I drilled new holes in it and filled in the old ones so that I could use glass knobs. Now, my next project is a piece of old green wood that I think it might have been paneling before, but I love this color of green. And it was some wood that I bought at an antique mall several years ago, and this is my last piece of it. So this is a piece of rice paper that I'm decoupaging on it, and I went around and tore the edges, except for on the right side, because when I get it all decoupaged on, I'm going to be sanding off that extra, and so I didn't really need to tear that. But I love that color, and it's one of my favorite green colors. Now I'm getting ready to put a Zuri mold on it. And the name of the mold is called Woman Bouquet with Bouquet. And it can be found at Maika Daughters, which I will leave in the description box below. And this is such a beautiful mold. And it's basically just a larger mold, and it's a woman with a long flowing dress on, and she's holding a bouquet of flowers. Now I'm also making another mold, and it's with Redesign with Prima, and it's called Large Emblem, and that can also be found at Maika Daughters. Now, when I put those molds on, if you'll notice to the right, it's one of those biscuit cutters, and I like to have those on hand when I'm transferring a big mold. And so I'm getting Titebond glue on the back of it, and then I'm going to slide that biscuit cutter underneath, and then I'm going to flip it over. And then what I do is I put it one way or in the other because I can't decide if I want that mold with it going a certain way. And so I think what I ended up doing was I flipped it over to the other way. But isn't that so pretty? Now once the molds dried, I painted them with Dixie Belle buttercream, and then I put clear wax on it. And then I put, it's called grunge gray wax, which really brought out the details of the mold. So if you're liking this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, why don't you and become part of our family? Now my next project is one of those things I've done several times, but you seem to really like them, and I'm just decorating a metal switch plate. I've painted it with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint, and I'm just trimming this transfer down, and it's by Redesign with Prima, and it's called Delicate Roses. Because in the past, what I've mainly done is just put molds on them, but I wanted to put a pretty background on this one to go with cottage core. Now this mold is by Redesign with Prima, and it's just a lot of different size roses with stems. And I'm picking out some of the different roses, and I'm going to put them on the inside between the two light switches. And so I want to make sure that I don't cover up any of the holes. So once I get them on, I paint those with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And then once they get dry, I paint them with Waverly Ballet Slipper Pink. And then at the end, I use gilding wax, gold gilding wax, to bring out the details on the roses. And then I go all around the edges of that light switch and put gold gilding wax on that because, well, I like the bling. So this is what it looks like. But I just think it's really pretty. So what do you think? Now this is just a little silver teapot that I thrifted recently, and it's not real silver, and it was very tarnished. And the first thing I did was I painted it with Dixie Belle Slick Stick. And I put a couple coats on it, and then the next day, I'm painting it with Dixie Belle Buttercream. And I'm just going all around, and I actually paint part of the inside of the teapot later. But I wanted to make sure that I got a couple good coats of paint on the outside, because what I'm going to be using it as a vase for flowers. Now, once I got a couple good coats on it, then I pulled out a napkin that I bought recently through Amazon, and I'll be sure to link it. And I'm just putting one flower on either side. And then once that dries, then I'm going to be using just a little crinkle stamp or a crackle stamp, and I'm using Iron Orchid Stone Gray ink, and I'm just putting that crackle stamp just here and there. And you can find a lot of these just little crackle stamps on Amazon. But I just wanted to kind of add a little bit of interest to it at the end. And then I'll be putting some faux flowers in it. And I imagine you could probably put some like fresh flowers in it, but that's not something that I normally do. So this is what it looks like. But I just think it's so dainty looking and so elegant looking. Now my next piece is this piece of wood that I bought at Hobby Lobby. And I painted it with Dixie Belle Sea Glass paint. And now I'm just putting some Big Top on it afterwards, because I'm going to be putting a transfer on it. Now the transfer is a fairly new transfer by Redesign with Prima, and it's called Fairy Flowers. And it's got several different little fairies in it. And so I just picked out the one that I thought would be appropriate for this little plaque. And I'm just using that one, and then I'm putting some extra little flowers around on the other side. And then there was a little transfer, and I think the word was dream. And so I'm just going around, and I'm using like the little stick to push it down. And then when you use transfers, once you pull it up all the way, then you just take that plastic that you're pulling back, and you just rub all over it, just very gently. And if there's any extra little pieces of the transfer that's not attached, then that just pushes them down. And there's just several different little pieces that I use on this plaque. And I just think it's so sweet, because I know that fairies and mushrooms and just those sort of garden things are really popular right now. Now, once I got it all finished, this is just a little 3-hook piece that I've got at Hobby Lobby, and it's made with cast iron. But before I drill the holes into it, I wanted to go ahead and just put some Titebond glue on it as well, because this plaque is really thin, and I didn't have any screws at the time to put in it, but I wanted to go ahead and put this on it. And then I went back later after I could go get some screws at the hardware store and screwed it in where the little notches were. And this will be just a pretty little plaque to put in a little girl's room, but I just think it's so sweet. Now, my next project goes along with the last video. Remember, I had a little cardboard box that I decorated, and so the box that I'm going to decorate now is the other part of that box. It was some of those stacking boxes. And this is just a little napkin that I actually got because I'm part of a decoupage club. And so I actually only have one of it. And then I painted the box with Dixie Belle Sea Glass. And this is the new IOD mold called Juliette. And it's a really large rose mold. And it's got roses all over it with all the leaves and the stems. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be using a corner of that mold, and I'm using air dry clay. And before I use the mold, I put cornstarch on it to make sure that it would release well. But because there were so many small parts to this, I actually put it in the freezer and let it set up good before I tried to pull it out of the mold. And once again, I'm using my biscuit cutter to fold it out onto that out of the mold. And then I'm going to flip it over and use Titebond glue on it. And then I will put that back onto the top of the box. But once I pulled it out of the mold, I saw that there were little pieces of the mold that I didn't want to keep on there. So I just used like a little slicer to pull those extra pieces off. I think, it was a little credit card. And I just pull off those parts that may have been like just part of a leaf, because this mold, all of the pieces are connected, and it works really well to just use it in small pieces, or you can use the whole mold. But because there were just some extra little parts, I'm just using that to get those pieces off before I glue it onto the box. Now, once I get it glued on and it dried, I'm using Waverly Ballet Slipper Pink. And because it just doesn't match the flowers exactly, I painted on, and then I wasn't really happy with it, so I pulled out a baby wipe and I started wiping it off because I was trying to decide if I was going to paint it a different color. And once I started wiping it off, it was almost like I had dry brushed it on, and I did like that. Now, this is some gold paint, and it's Folk Art Treasure Gold, and I'm using the IOD Alphabellies Stamp. And if you've never used like actual paint on a stamp, I just pour it out just onto the side, and then I use a brayer to put it on. And it just adds that extra detail. It's the stamp that I use is actually all around the bottom of it. Now, in my last video, I had a gray frame that I put a large transfer in. So this is another one of the transfers that came in that set. And the name of that transfer is called Bike Rides. And I'm just like pushing it down on the back side of that cardboard that I used. And then I make sure that I seal it, and then I just slide it into that frame. Now, one thing I wanted to show you is that this is actually just some scrapbook paper that I got off of Amazon, which is Cottage Core, and I just put it in some gallery frames. So friends, we are already to the end of the video. It's been fast and furious, and I've showed you a lot of projects today. But this is the last part of the Cottage Core before I start something else. So I hope you like it. And actually, if you'll look on that little dresser, I love antique letters. And these are just some letters that I bought years ago at a flea market. And I just tied them up with some lace around it. And actually, one of the envelopes was pink, so I put that one on top. So in your comments today, let me know which one was your favorite. And also, I've already started thinking about the next videos that I'm going to put out. But in your comments, let me know if there's something in particular that you're wanting me to do. And I will try to figure it out and make sure if I could do it. Because this video was actually a special request by a viewer. And she wanted a video with cottage core in it. So I've tried really hard to come up with as much cottage core as I can, but I'll head in a different direction with my next video. But what's your favorite today? I think the little nightstand is probably my favorite, and then after that it's going to be that green piece of wood that has the little woman with bouquets on it, because I like that color of green so much. And I actually did not paint that. When I bought it, the wood was already painted. And it's that 50s color green that's so pretty. But I really, really like all the different pieces today. So make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment. I hope you have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you so much.